now standard are going to get to square off here in round 11.
Yeah, this is kind of the matchup for me, and so this is going to be a great one to watch. Two great players in a very interesting matchup.
I said before, for Ross, Merriam, and Todd Anderson on their blue-red control list, have not taken a loss to anyone other than the other person. So we're underway here. Ross will lead on Basic Mountain. For Craig, it is a copy of Lumbering Falls. Now, we have seen some players with the Bant Company deck go into a fourth color, I'll put that in quotes, to play a card like Eldrazi Displacer.
Right, none of that going on in Craig's list. He has shaved the Jace. It looks like he's ended up with just another copy of Tireless Tracker is the direction he went.
All right. So the game underway, both players will trade 2 drops. Ross starts with a Thing in the Ice on 4 counters. For Krempels, it's a copy of Duskwatch Recruiter. And now Ross will go to work. Here's that card advantage that we know out of the deck. It is Tormenting Voice, discarding Fiery Temper to Madness. So what a turn for Ross. He will get to draw 2 cards. He'll get card advantage to kill Craig's 2-drop and gets to remove 2 counters off Thing in the Ice.
And that's an interaction where being on the play was actually huge for Ross. He was able to take advantage of that before Craig had a 3rd land or a 2nd creature in play.
How much value is that? That's a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1? That's filthy, that play.
Right, you're not actually losing a card. You're just 1-for-1ing on your discard. And then from there, it's a 2-for-1 on the Tormenting Voice. So it's a 3-for-2, I guess is how it breaks down?
Yeah, and then he gets the 2 counters on Thing in the Ice. Now, Craig is going to reset that clock. His turn 3 play is Reflector Mage, bouncing the Thing in the Ice back to Ross's hand.
Reflector Mage matches up very well against Thing in the Ice when you're ahead on board, though this Goggles deck is going to put in work to maintaining.
Ross trying to recast the Thing in the Ice, but it has been reflected with Reflector Mage, so he's going to have to wait a turn for that play.
Shame on you, Ross. You know that one.
You didn't play enough Rally Mirrors last season. Look, Ross, looks like he does have a 4th land. Now, one thing I'm interested in here is land management in this deck. You see he's going to use Magmatic Insight. It's another Tormenting Voice effect, but it can only discard lands. This is really interesting with the deck.
Right, you get in kind of a weird spot when you have your 4th land drop but no 5th land in hand and you have the Magmatic Insight. Because the thing is, if you don't discard it and you draw a bunch of lands, you feel really silly. If you do discard it and you don't draw lands, you feel even worse.
Right. So after the Magmatic Insight, Ross plays the Shivan Reef he drew. No more plays. For Craig, he'll get his first attack in. It's the Reflector Mage swings. We'll see how he wants to keep committing. It looks like Craig may be missing land drop number 4.
Ideal turn here is probably Tireless Tracker plus land, or leaving up Collected Company, of course.
Right. Here's the Tireless Tracker. We'll see if he has the land to go with it, but he does not.
Things are going to get awkward from here.
Yeah.
Craig wants to find that land post-haste.
Ross end step will Kozilek's Return to sweep away that Tireless Tracker. Reflector Mages with a 3 toughness will survive, so just a clean 1-for-1 for Ross.
Yeah, you don't always want to use a sweeper right away when it only kills 1 creature, but the tracker, if lands come out the top for Craig, was going to have a big impact on this game.
Absolutely. For Ross, he'll recast that Thing in the Ice now. Pass back to Craig. Ross as well missing on lands, so he's on 4. I suppose at 4, I'm not sure that it's even missing anymore for the blue-red control deck. With these blue-red decks, there's a certain point at which you stop wanting lands.
Right, you have to get the 5 for Goggles, and 6 if you ever want to cast a Chandra Flamecaller. And Goggles is a big part of a lot of the games that the blue-red control deck actually does win. It makes your Tormenting Voices and your Magmatic Insight so much better.
Yeah.
But you can definitely play the game on 4 for a long time, especially Thing in the Ice specifically enables that type of magic for you.
We go back to Krempels. He did hit his land drop. It was a copy of Lumbering Falls. We'll start with an attack here. Reflector Mage will attack. Thing in the Ice blocks. With a Dromoka's command in hand, Craig actually can fight this down now.
Right, he could do combat damage and then fight it for additional points and take care of the Thing in the Ice.
Plays Lumbering Falls. It looks like he's going to decline, though, on the Dromoka's command. He just passes the turn back to Ross. I suppose it's 4 counters away, right?
Right, and he's probably just looking to advance his board. I assume we'll see a Bounding Krasis at Ross's end step here. Yeah, fighting over 1 creature on your opponent's side to get a 3/4 in play is much worse than just having 2 creatures.
We go back to Merriam. Here's 3 mana. It's the 1-of copy of Jori and Ruin Diver.
I don't know if you're pronouncing that correctly. I believe it's Jory N. Ruin Diver.
Oh, okay. It's... I don't even know what... Okay. When Ross plays a second spell of the turn, he gets to draw a card. Now, he didn't have another spell to go with the Jorian.
Right, though next turn, if he's able to just cast 2 spells naturally, there's a lot of pressure on Craig to Reflector Mage this Jorian, or it can start to run away with the game.
So here's what we have. Craig goes back to his turn. He'll attack Reflector Mage into Thing in the Ice. And now we may see that Dromoka's command. I don't know if Craig is okay with Ross having a Jorian in play. We'll see.
Right, Jorian, as compared to a Thing in the Ice with 4 counters, is more problematic for Craig. At least in an immediate sense.
Craig will play Jace's Prodigy and then actually just pass the turn.
Okay. Ross hasn't demonstrated that he has more copies of Tormenting Voice in his hand, for example, so it does take some specific combinations for him to be able to cast 2 spells, though something like Lightning Axe into Fiery Temper would be huge here. Of course, holding up the Dromoka's command gives you game against that because you can prevent damage from one of the burn spells.
Yeah, and I think that's the way Craig has chosen to play this. Rather than trying to get aggressive with cards like Dromoka's command, he is looking to counter Ross's removal with the instant.
Right.
Most of Ross's removal is red-based damage, so Dromoka's command, a solid 2-for-1 in those situations.
And oftentimes green-white decks, they have to commit to an aggressive role, but the thing about the Bant deck is you're able to generate a lot of value. You don't have to go crazy aggressive and just use your spells as soon as you draw them.
All right, so Ross will, this is gonna, looks like it'll repeat here, Tormenting Voice.
Discard was Magmatic Insight.
Oh,
I assume
okay.
that's pretty common with this deck.
You do have a lot of those effects.
Right.
So 1 counter off of the Thing in the Ice. Now the next spell will draw him a card for Jorian.
In any game where you're missing land drops, discarding Magmatic Insight to the Tormenting Voice is kind of really good deck building.
And here's Fiery Impulse. So it's going to holding the triggers on the stack. Ross is set to draw a card from Jorian and remove a counter from Thing in the Ice. We'll see whether Krempels will fight. He will not. Jace hits the graveyard. Thing in the Ice goes down to 2. Jorian draws Ross a card. A big turn here for Merriam.
Right. Craig was not super interested in fighting there because the Dromoka's command would just be a dispel for the Fiery Impulse for a Jace that is a couple turns off of flipping anyway.
Yeah, and I do like this. He's really assigning a lot of value to that Dromoka's command. He wants it to. He's waiting for that card to get him a solid 2-for-1.
Right.
So you go back to Krempels. It's now 18 apiece. This really just has been a game of positioning and card advantage up to this point.
Yep, life totals are still at 18. The pressure is now on Krempels to find some sort of value engine of his own, not just to compete with Ross's Jorian, but also because that Thing in the Ice gets a little warmer every turn.
Back to Krempels. Still stuck on those 4 lands, and that is starting to catch up with Craig.
Yeah,
he has cards like Duskwatch Recruiter, Sylvan Advocate, things that want lands.
I agree with Craig trying to pick a better spot for Dromoka's command, but on the last turn when we see him only using half of his mana, when his board is not especially developed, that kind of stuff does sting.
You wanted to try to keep Jace around to loot some of this away, maybe?
Well, or just, trying to spend 3 mana on that turn even, or if there was a way to spend all 4 mana.
Yeah, it is 4 lands in play, and frequently he's untapping, never having spent 2 of his mana.
Right. I think he had access to a Sylvan Advocate. He could have played that last turn, though then you are opening yourself up to just getting hit by Lightning Axe Fiery Temper, which is not a great position. It's a tough game for Craig to navigate.
We go to Merriam's side. He will cast another Thing in the Ice. Now remember, even on both sides, Thing in the Ice is a horror, so it doesn't get bounced. And Craig, here's a great reply. It's a main deck copy of Ojutai's command. This is a 1 of, and it shows why he was holding up all 4 of that mana. He's looking to counter the Thing in the Ice from Ross and draw a card. So a big 2-for-1 here for Krempels.
Yep, that one is definitely going to be important. If Craig can start finding his 5th and 6th lands, we'll see his turns be a lot more impressive. And that Sylvan Advocate in hand will, of course, be a lot more relevant when it comes down and there are 6 lands in play. You now force Merriam to have the Lightning Axe for the Advocate. You have more than enough mana to leave up Dromoka's command if that happens.
Yeah.
You can also just put a +1/+1 counter to survive the Lightning Axe at that point.
So we look at Ross. He spent 2 of his mana for the turn. Like Krempels, he's also stuck on 4. And now he will play a third thing in the ice. This is the second spell of the turn, so it will trigger Jorien. Ross draws a card, and a great card indeed. It's Wandering Fumarole. That's his land number 5, and it's a creature land on top of that.
Right, it was a creature land. Finding a window, he didn't have anything to do with the last mana anyway, so the creature land was the right land for that spot.
So land 5 in play for Ross and 2 thing in the ices. We will go to Krempels. He's going to attack again into the 0/4s. And this time Ross declines to block at all.
Ross is dangerously close to just attacking Craig for 16 on this board, so he's not going to risk throwing these creatures away. Yeah, we're kind of far from flipping the thing in the ice with 4 counters on it. I can't imagine that Ross is casting 4 spells on the next turn, but casting 2 is easily within range.
And while Ross is tapped out, Craig's going to take advantage of this. And now he's decided it's time for the Dromoka's Command. It'll be Bounding Krasis. That will come to play. He'll use Dromoka's Command to turn the Krasis up to a 4/4 and fight down the thing in the ice with 2 counters.
That was a good spot for the Dromoka's Command. If that thing in the ice flipped this turn, which it's very likely to do, suddenly Craig has no creatures in play. The Jorian's going to come back and get cast with another spell. Ross is going to continue drawing cards. Meanwhile, Craig's going to test for 7.
So I was going to say that 4/4 Krasis was great because it gets out of removal spell range, but Ross, proving that wrong, his play taps both mountains for Lightning Axe, discarding Fiery Temper, and kill spells both of Craig's creatures for 2 mana, knocks the new thing in the ice down to 2 counters, attacks with Jorien draws a card, plays Jace. This is where I look at these decks, and they're both very powerful. I do feel that Ross's deck scales better into the late game, and he's showing it off right now.
I believe that the Bant deck more consistently does the things that it does. You know, if your the game plan is just to cast a bunch of creatures, come up with some kind of board advantage, the blue-red deck, it's not always going to play the same game. Sometimes you have Thing in the Ice games, sometimes you have Goggles games, and not both bloodlands don't always match up favorably against a given deck. But when the right game plan presents itself for the blue-red control deck, it's very powerful.
Reflector Mage from Craig will bounce the Jace. He will play Duskwatch Recruiter and pass back. Okay, but how good has Jorien been here? I think every turn on Ross has drawn a card every turn off Jorien.
Jorian's been very impressive. I believe there's only 1 copy in the list.
Yeah, just 1. The creature base is 4/4/1. Jace's Thing in the Ices and the single Jorien.
I definitely agree with that. When I was looking at this deck, that's the kind of card I was looking at shaving. Drawing a couple is kind of awkward, but it's very good when it's good.
Here's the flagship late game, Pyromancer's Goggles from Ross. He'll cast it. He'll tap it for Lightning Axe. That's 2 Lightning Axes. It'll again kill both of Craig's creatures. It'll draw a card off Jorien again. It'll swing in. Craig down to 14. You know, going back, Craig had an option immediately of Dromoka's Command to fight down the Jorien, and I like how he used Dromoka's Command. It was in a great spot. But look, I feel like when you look back at this game, you might wonder, maybe we did not assign enough value to that card.
It's certainly possible. We also, if that happened, we could have been looking at a game where the first thing in the ice actually just closed already.
Right, and maybe he doesn't have the luxury to do it. And
right.
It's, you know, maybe it's this world where if Craig has a lot of Dromoka's commands, then one of them hits Jorien.
Specifically, though, when you look at Craig just leaving 2 mana on the table when he has 4 lands in play, there is some kind of potential for a line that could have won this game.
All right, so Craig, for the 3rd turn in a row, he will make 2 creatures. It'll be Reflector Mage bouncing the thing in the ice with 1 counter, and a copy of Sylvan Advocate. The last 2 turns, Ross has used Lightning Axes in conjunction with Pyromancer's Goggles and Fiery Temper to sweep Craig's board. We'll see if he can sweep its board for a 3rd time.
No shortage of cards in hand.
He'll start on Jace. Ooh, 5 mana with Goggles. That's
this
scary.
smells like a Fall of the Titans to me. Fall of the Titans.
Oh no. So this is surged. So Fall of the Titans deals X damage to 2 different targets when it's surged. So Ross can do 4 to 2 things. So it's 4 to Reflector Mage, 4 to Craig, and then it's copied 4 to Reflector Mage, 4 to Craig. So Craig takes 8. For the 3rd turn in a row, loses both his creatures, takes a 10th point of damage off Jorien. down to 4. This is...
And Ross draws another card.
Oh, yeah, Jorian. Oh, of course. And that will be game 1 over to Ross Merriam, blue-red control.
That Jorian really carried his weight there.
Wow. And you can just see the grin on his face. When you have a deck that gets to do plays like that, you can't help but smile.
I played a card that's called Pyromancer's Goggles, and it was really good. That's great design. I love it when the cards that have like wonky names, and it is a weird mechanic too. Like it's this artifact that forks when you use mana. It's a 5-mana
mana rock?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Those are just like the really cool and fun cards to win with. Not to mention that it was, of course, objectively powerful.
No, I mean, it's a card that for free generates a second copy of Fall of the Titans. You have my attention at that point.
Right.
All right, we're going to go ahead and look over at the sideboard. So starting on Craig Krempels' side, he is down a game. We see Dramoka's Command, Negate, Hidden Dragon Slayer, Den Protector, Lantern Scout, Clip Wings, Declaration Stone, Ojutai's Command, Tragic Arrogance, and Sigarda, Heron's Grace. Now, what I felt like was going on in that game was Craig did a great job of keeping pace up until about the point where Ross hit 5 lands, and I felt that Ross's deck scaled better. Can Craig do something to fight that? Either he needs to get lower to win before Ross's late game's online, or he needs to compete with Ross's late game.
He doesn't have an avenue to get lower. He's just going to be a deck full of 2 and 3 mana creatures no matter how he plays with this sideboard he has available to him. So the plan is going to be to bring in some interactive spells to fight Ross on the stack. When Ross was casting his Haymakers and casting his Goggles, Craig just has to sit there and let it resolve. Post-sideboard, we have access to Negate.
All right, so counter the Goggles, then we don't have any of this 2 lightning axes for 1 mana stuff.
Right. Dramoka's Command, I think that I like the 4th copy of that coming in here. It's able to fight over burn spells. It's able to clean up the 0/4 thing in the ice. Both of these things seem pretty important in this matchup.
We saw how good Dramoka's Command was that last game. Craig saving it like it seemed that the way Craig was playing the card, he believed this card was gold in the matchup. He wanted nothing, like he was really waiting for just a prime opportunity to cast it. If he believes the card is that good, that it should be played that slowly, I would assume he wants to play more copies of it.
Yeah, and the other card we're probably looking at is Sigarda, Heron's Grace.
This is an interesting one. I haven't seen this one much in Standard yet.
It's got kind of a weird text box. It's the kind of card that seems like it's worth playing with against control decks. So it gives you and humans you control hexproof. There's some humans in this deck we're protecting. We have Reflector Mage.
Duskwatch Recruiter is a human only on the day side.
Right. Mostly we have a creature that demands a lightning axe on his own and also kind of blanks the fiery temper against a lot of your creatures.
Okay, so if Ross doesn't have a lightning axe, this could survive.
And also Sigarda can make a bunch of creatures, so it's a value engine for Craig's deck. So you can keep pace with the value out of Ross's deck.
A Horde of 1/1 seems like it could be very good against against the blue-red control deck.
Right.
For Ross Merriam, the Roanoke player, he has been a 2-time Players' Championship competitor, had a deep run in 2014 before the early exit in 2015. An invitational win here could get him his 3rd spot consecutive year in the Players' Championship. You see, now living in Roanoke, originally from Middletown, Connecticut, Ross Merriam, 15 Open Series top 8s, 3 wins, 2 Invitational top 8s, looking for his first win. He's an avid Jeopardy fan, and I believe actively seeking to be a contestant on the show. I believe he at some point in the future, it will be a contestant. I don't believe a date is set yet for it, but for a Jeopardy fan, watch for this guy. He's quite the trivia buff.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Or if you're just a Ross Merriam fan, I mean, good for him. That's quite the accomplishment.
All right, we're going to look back at game number 2 here. Krempels versus Merriam. Krempels down a game on Bant Company. Really would have been the 2 flagship decks of the weekend. So if you're looking to play Standard, this is a matchup you're going to want to watch being piloted by these players. Mm-hmm. And Krempels is the start of 2 Lumbering Falls, and Ross, he'll get part of the engine going. It is a Tormenting Voice on turn 2. The mana slow but consistent here for Krempels. It'll be Evolving Wilds plus Sylvan Advocate, and he'll pass. We have, like I said, said before, there were some of these Bant Company decks have gone as far as to play a copy of Wastes to support some colorless cards. Craig just on the Bant version. Mm-hmm.
This is not the matchup where Displacer especially shines. Blinking Thing in the Ice is actually quite powerful. But it's just another 3 toughness creature for Ross to pluck away with Fiery Temper. It's fine, but this is not where this is especially going to hurt Craig.
Ross's turn 3 play is Thing in the Ice. He leaves up a Wandering Fumarole. Both cards available as we will go back to Krempels. A card that was very absent from last game on Krempels' side. Despite being stuck on 4 lands all game, we never really saw a copy of the card Collected Company. And I'll tell you, in a deck called Bant Company, that can really change your matchups.
Yeah, the only 4-mana spell we saw Craig cast was Ojutai's Command, and it was a 2-for-1, but not in the same way.
He will go for the main phase Collected Company. He doesn't want to let Ross untap with Negate. Now, much to his chagrin, Ross had the 1-mana counterspell. That was a copy of his sideboard, a Dispel, that he played for single blue.
And it had to be Dispel exactly. So I like Craig playing into that because going forward, there's much less obligation for Ross to tap that low.
And it'll be a second Thing in the Ice for Ross. He'll pass. Once again, leaving up that blue-red. I'm wondering if Craig would try another Collected Company into it. Surely Ross doesn't have another Dispel.
I would. Do you force him to have that card exactly again?
Doesn't look like Craig has another company. You see reshuffling his lands here. A pair of Plains and a pair of Lumbering Falls. Does have Reflector Mage available.
The thing about Dispel is as a 1-mana counterspell, it gets really easy to represent it the longer the game goes.
It's very hard to play around 1-mana counters because your opponent, it's not too taxing on them to always represent it.
And if you wait around too long, there's some 0-4s that have a high likelihood of turning into 7-8s.
All right, so Reflector Mage puts one of the things in the ice back in Ross's hand. Craig tries an attack, Ross calls and blocks. Post-combat, Craig makes Jace Vryn's Prodigy. So now just the 1/0/4 in play for Ross. 3 creatures on Craig's side. His board's becoming quite formidable. Now, one thing we haven't seen yet out of the blue control deck is we haven't seen those horrors break out of their icy prisons.
Not yet in this matchup. On the following turn, Craig is just able to recommit Reflector Mage if that's not dealt with and put into the graveyard. Though you do get that attack for 7 and you do reset the board.
So Ross is going to play Drownyard Temple and then discard Wandering Fumarole to Lightning Axe. Come now, that's not how we do this.
How good is Fall of the Titans?
Yeah, and then plays Fall of the Titans post-combat, surging it to kill all of Craig's creatures. This card is, this is great.
It's the card that when everybody first read it, they're like, oh, okay, so it's this 2-headed giant card, whatever. Every time I've seen it cast and constructed, it's been excellent.
I agree. I think we need to take a second look at that card. Now, you have to have a specific deck, right? You have to be able to be surging. You really can't cast the card without surge.
Right.
Its mana efficiency without being surged is horrible.
Playing it in a deck that doesn't have Magmatic Insight, for example, is somewhat awkward. I wouldn't recommend that.
With all the creatures dead, Craig's going to have to look for some more. He will cast Collected Company main phase. And spinning this wheel, a pretty big deal. We'll see just what he hits. He does hit 2 creatures, Den Protector and Reflector Mage. So once again, the Thing in the Ice back into Ross's hand. It seems like they just never get to roam free.
Of course, Ross's deck, very capable of winning the game without the Thing in the Ice. What really matters in this matchup is keeping up on the card advantage.
Removal. The fact that, what I'm thinking is we've seen Ross, these plays where he plays 2 kill spells on Craig's board. That seems what this is about.
Exactly.
So Ross's play was just a Jace, and then he passed back. Keep in mind, there's 2 copies of Thing in the Ice in Ross's hand. Craig has Reflector Mage them both there.
Right. There won't be any legal blockers for Den Protector. Of course, the face-up Den Protector, Craig would really rather draw that to get back his Collected Company.
All right, so now for the first time, Craig's going to try to press his advantage. We're going to get our first look at Tireless Tracker. And this card becoming quite the mainstay of Bant Company decks, Green-White Humans decks, and the card advantage generates pretty real here. So this is a 3/2 for 3 out of Shadows over Innistrad. Whenever Craig plays a land, he will get to investigate, and every time he sacrifices a clue, this creature gets bigger. So quite the play. He'll play that, and by the way, how about another Reflector Mage on Jace?
And just with this first clue made off of the tracker, sacrificing that will already make it big enough to just attack into these things on the ice and kill them.
Yeah, Ross will play both the Thing in the Ice again, and then play Magmatic Insight, discarding a land, bringing both of those down.
Craig gives Ross a hand with adjusting the dice.
Yeah, Craig's a great guy. You know, we'll get this one moving. So Ross, at this point, I don't think he's going to be able to kill all the creatures on the board. It seems like his plan is to get these things out of the ice.
Right, and I believe that off that insight, he picked up a copy of Lightning Axe. He really wants Craig. This is awkward. Every draw step is actually good for Craig right here. Either he finds a land that lets him draw a card with the Tireless Tracker, or he draws a spell, and spells are spells.
So he cracks a clue, draws a land, makes another clue. Tireless Tracker's real good. If you don't kill that creature, it's... Jeez.
Right, so the Lightning Axe on the following turn will enable Ross to kill that, but if Craig has, say, picked up a Dromoka's Command,
and that doesn't
would
work
be
at all.
huge.
So the swing from Craig is a 4/3 Tireless Tracker, a pair of Reflector Mages, and the Den Protector. Now, the Den Protector can't be blocked by the 0/4s.
Right.
So we'll see just what Ross blocks. He goes to 10, so looks like the block were on the Reflector Mages. He's going to need to play 3 spells this turn. If these guys don't break out of the ice,
We did find the goggles.
All right, so Pyromancer's Goggles. This is just instant sorcery. Keep in mind, artifacts do not trigger Thing in the Ice, so at 3, those creatures will stay. It's not quite prowess. I mentioned if he has that copy of Lightning Axe, well, that could do some work.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to go for an upkeep. I was just thinking that if he lets Craig make a land drop, that I probably read the card wrong, but
right.
Looks like it was the axe.
Well, this time Ross pulls off the neat play. Not only is it Lightning Axe, but discarding the Drownyard Temple.
This is one of my favorite combos. Discarding Drownyard Temple to anything.
When I've been drafting this set, I picked Drownyard Temple far too early because I just love making these kind of plays.
Oh, gross.
And hey, there's this Mythic rare in the set that's been very good that we haven't seen this round so far. And here she is. This is the Archangel Avacyn.
Here I was talking about Dromoka's Command so that Craig can keep pace. How about a Haymaker?
All right, well, that will make Avacyn, at least on her day side, protects her flock. All those humans there, they're all indestructible. No damage, no harm will come to them.
The nice thing about waiting until upkeep here is the Avacyn did come into play on Craig's turn. So Ross not being
that's
attacked
really good.
right now.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was definitely
Well played,
smart of
Ross
Ross to wait. Right.
There's a lot of nuance to both sides of this matchup, and these players are keyed into it.
Definitely.
So on Craig's turn, he'll swing the team again. 2 Reflector Mages, Den Protector, Tireless Tracker. He still has that 1 clue token, so when Ross goes to no blocks, you see Tracker is going to move up to 5/4 and draw Craig a card. Both Reflector Mages were blocked, so the Tracker and the Den Protector get in. That's 7 damage. Ross down to 3. You see Craig, Tireless Tracker will just tirelessly pump out more clue tokens. With Ross at 3, there's a problem here of you can't kill any of Craig. So Avacyn, when she transforms, deals 3 to all the opponents.
Yeah. And the only thing that Ross could really do to get himself out or start getting himself out.
Break those things out of the ice.
And attack for 14. Of course, Craig has more than enough mana to untap Reflector Mage both of those creatures, or even just wait and block with Avacyn and then attack with that creature.
I think Ross coming to the same conclusion. So with 22 minutes left, we're going to go to a third deciding game here between Merriam and Krempels.
Yeah, this matchup is not disappointing.
So these players are getting ready for a third and final deciding game. So for you following us here at the Columbus Invitational, this is the end of our Season 1 here on the SCG Tour. So what that means is the top 3 points getters get invites to the Players' Championship. The winner of the Invitational, of course, gets an invite to the Pro Tour, the Players' Championship, receives a fair prize as well. A lot of stuff here. If you want to make it out to the next Invitational, well, in 2 weeks in Milwaukee, we start the SCG Season 2 of our tour. So get those points, get your spot in the Players' Championship, and compete against the likes of Craig Krempels and Ross Merriam. So we will be starting, as I said, in Milwaukee. This is the Modern Open. You and I will be there over in Wisconsin. So we travel to 3 different parts of the country here during Season 2. So we're going to start out in the Midwest. That means we have Milwaukee, we have Indianapolis. Those are some modern events. After that, we make our way toward the south for the middle part of the season. So Atlanta, Orlando, Dallas. We have standard and modern for those events. So you continue on. Then we make our way back up to end the season in the Northeast. So we have Worcester, Massachusetts. That's our Legacy Open. We have one of those every season. So if you're a Legacy fan, you're always looking for those big organized play Legacy events. Get out to Worcester, Massachusetts, and go ahead and compete there. When we finish things up, we'll make a trip back here to Columbus before finishing in Baltimore, Syracuse, and then the New Jersey Invitational, August 19th through 21st.
A lot of great events to hit up. I kind of wish that I could be playing in Milwaukee. I think that Modern is really sweet right now, but it's going to be a blast to cover.
Yeah, I love Modern. I can't I would cover Modern events all day if I could.
Modern is the biggest roller coaster format to me.
That's why I love it.
It's got high highs and low lows.
I like people doing flashy things and big plays. Modern, I will admit, people copying things with Pyromancer's goggles. All right, I'm gonna get kind of excited about that. But you know what? I like cards with Storm. Things like let's not just copy your spell once. Let's copy it 7 times. Let's play Modern.
I like cards with the text box draw 3 cards. Especially when you can cast them for only 1 blue mana.
Well, Magmatic Insight, right? That's off goggles. That's the Ancestral Visions of the format. It's a +3.
That's what
for
I was
1 mana.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, okay, it's draw 4, discard 1. That's close enough, right? All right, underway, game 3 here. Ross, Merriam, and Craig Krempels. Ross, the first play of turn 2, Tormenting Voice. Hey, look at that discard there.
He's got
look
the
at
combo.
That. He's got the discarding the copy of Drown Your Temple. If Ross ever finds himself with 3 mana and nothing to do, he can ramp that one into play.
We're able to bring in the Temple on turn 3, and that enables a turn 4 Goggles.
I'm actually kind of interested. So we haven't seen Ross ever get back his Drown Yard Temples. It's never really seemed like he's had that kind of mana sitting around to do something with. But on the play, on turn 3, I wonder if he'll go for the colorless Rampant Growth.
Yeah, in game 2, he didn't really have time to mess around. It's going to come down to how he feels about Craig's turn 2.
Yeah, if Craig's play was another Lumbering Falls, I think Ross would be a big fan. We see Duskwatch Recruiter for Craig, and that may not make this ramp play an option. If Ross brings the Drown Yard Temple back, this Werewolf will flip.
It kind of depends on the removal that Ross has available. Oftentimes, you just kind of want the Recruiter to flip, because on the backside, it can't generate any card advantage.
All right. Wandering Fumarole and Thing in the Ice is the turn 3 play for Ross. So not yet.
I think that part of the decision there also comes down to Ross having that Fumarole, having that tapped land. This is a good window for that.
And I love this Craig swinging the Duskwatch Recruiter. I like how consistently Craig has been chump checking these 0/4s. Yeah. Every turn of every game, he's always attacking into them, and he's never had a trick.
Yeah, and Ross has not always blocked.
There was, in game 1, I think Craig did get 2 free damage off it.
Yeah.
And he's even had the Dromoka's commands, and now never fires them off. Just
that helps sell the fact that you can convince Ross that you don't have it.
So we go Canopy Vista for Craig, and then a pass. So now the Duskwatch Recruiter is the Kralin Horde Howler. It's a 3/3. Creature spells cost Craig 1 less to cast. Now this is relevant here because there's a certain 5-drop that now maybe Craig could play next turn. I believe she showed up last game.
Not immediately relevant with the lands available on Ross's turn here. He doesn't have mana to actually cast a Bounding Crisis here, though the threshold for 3 mana is there. The basic planes doesn't help.
Yeah, you're right. That basic planes can't cast Bounding Crisis, can it?
But on the following turn, an Avacyn would be pretty huge.
So that's his only flash creature, so there's nothing that... Okay, he's not going to put anything into play on Ross's side.
Right.
Yeah, he tries to make the Bounding Crisis play, but we actually have to back that up. Yeah, he notices it himself that he can't make the play. Goes back over. Ross's turn was a 4th land and a pass. Perhaps Drown Yard Temple. I just never feel like Ross has a window to get back that land. I really want him to because the play is so cool.
Right. Maybe it's just too cute.
There have got to be matchups where it's good. Maybe this is just not one of them.
Yeah. Or it's also true that there's just windows where this play is good. Say if Craig just played a tap land on turn 2, then it makes a lot of sense for Ross to just put that land into play.
So the Crown Horde Howler going to work here. You see Craig on his turn, he's going to play that copy of Nissa, Vastwood Seer, for just 2. With the trigger on the stack, before Craig can go ahead and get a forest, Ross will Lightning Axe away the Howler.
Yeah, at this point, Ross knows there's no Collected Company coming down this turn. There's no Avacyn, and with Craig down to 1 land, there's no flash creature that can come with Nissa on the stack.
Ross discarding another Drown Yard Temple. Okay, hey, we have 3 lands up. He just played Lightning Axe.
We're going to see it?
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it, okay? It's the world's most exciting Rampant Growth. Because Ross didn't pay for it. It's just free.
I mean, you do pay for it by putting Lightning Axe in your deck. In a lot of standard formats, that card is completely unplayable.
I guess we did. Okay, it is a... All right, we did pay for it by discarding. I guess. And here we go. All right, wow. Look at that. Into play. Ross untaps extra land right here.
Well, I'm ready to call this match. That's how you...
I am so...
How do you beat that?
Just the commanding play here by Ross. All right, he'll untap, make a 6th land. Craig, to his point, added a copy of Jace Vryn's Prodigy to the board. And now Ross, with all this extra mana that he doesn't know what to do with, will play Pyromancer's Goggles.
And with the tap land on that turn, that mana does matter off of the temple.
I think that was actually a bullet dodge there for Craig. I think the nightmare scenario would have been that Ross played Chandra Flamecaller -2.
I'm going to play a Planeswalker and kill your 2
and kill your board.
Planeswalkers.
Yeah. They are both Planeswalkers, aren't they? They're just creatures now, but someday this is their origin story.
With some time and effort, and good execution.
All right, Craig, 5th land and another copy of the Duskwatch Recruiter. So with 3 mana up, Craig can activate that immediately, even if Ross has the kill spell. We go back over to Merriam. Goggles and Thing in the Ice, so he's going to discard. Oh boy, this is where I love Pyromancer's Goggles. It's Tormenting Voice copied. So this card that normally is a pitch 2 to draw 2, now is discard to draw 4.
Yeah, now we're in that territory that I was talking about.
Now we're playing. That is a draw. That's just a draw 3, isn't it? That's a.
Yeah.
That's good.
He'd prefer to discard something like a Fiery Temper here.
Oh, so we only get the draw 3, not the draw 4.
Because then we're also in Lightning Bolt territory. Another thing that I get pretty excited about.
So see, we can play Lightning Bolt and Treasure Cruises outside of. We can't play those in Modern.
Well, yeah, can play. Treasure Cruise saw more time in Standard than it did.
So what you're saying? This is basically Ancestral Visions on Lightning Bolt. It's just the Standard version. We just have to play 5 mana artifact mana rocks, and then we can do that and play.
I disagree with your verbiage. This is a privilege. You get to play 5 mana artifacts.
All right. So with these new wealth of cards, we'll see where Ross goes. I think it's a Fall of the Titans again. Yeah, the Titans will come down. 2 damage to both Nissa Vastwood Seer and Duskwatch Recruiter. Ross is going to try to remove another counter off that Thing in the Ice. Craig will loot. Finds Basic Force. That's not a help. Puts a Plains in the bin, and now the creatures follow. No activation on Duskwatch Recruiter here.
So there's got to be something cooking.
I think so, right? Bounding Krasis, maybe?
Yeah, he knows that Ross was likely to flip over the Thing in the Ice here.
We actually know about Bounding Krasis. There was a turn where Craig tried to play it,
right,
but couldn't.
Yep,
so
yep.
It's still there.
So he's leaving it there, so he's going to be able to attack the Thing and not take 7 this turn. Hopefully follow that up with a Reflector Mage.
Well, there's another neat play here. Bounding Krasis can untap a creature. He could turn that Jace into a Planeswalker.
Yeah, we could do that as well.
I suppose the Awoken Horror still bounces. Yeah, Thing in the Ice. Ross is going to go for another spell here. That's going to go ahead and end it. Now we have Awoken the Horror. Yeah, it actually only bounces creatures. So he could have been a Planeswalker to save. Yeah, I don't know. Then I guess the 7/8 just attacks the Planeswalkers.
Right.
So here we go. The Awoken Horror comes out of the ice. Right. I believe you have a great name for this card.
Yeah, Thing out of the ice, or Thing for short.
Well, it will bounce Jace. Jace runs away scared to Craig's hand. I mean, I would too. That thing's terrifying. But it's not going to attack this turn. Bounding Krasis does tap.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that interaction, a good play that players often make with Jace, you could like Krasis to untap it, block, and then transform it, but it would be bounced in this situation. That line's actually not available to Craig. So the Awoken Horror doing some serious work there.
A Jace was a follow-up for Merriam, and now we go back to Krempels. He's going to cast a face-down morph. Does he have hidden? He has hidden Dragon Slayers in the list, right?
Indeed, I believe that there's one copy. It's a hidden Dragon Slayer or it's a Den Protector.
So it's a hidden Horror Slayer. Does that work too?
Can
it kill non-dragons? It's not. I think so.
It can kill non-dragons, which is not great flavor. It could kill anything.
Well, they were successful enough at slaying the dragons that he had to find other employment. Bounding Krasis will tap the Horror again. In response, Ross is going to loot with Jace. Craig last turn got his first damage in that. Bounding Krasis attacked Ross to 17. I feel like Ross has stayed really high on life points here. Looting away another Drownyard Temple. This is just, the value.
Right. And like I was saying earlier, this matchup does come down to value. Really more than anything. Craig can't effectively beat down before Ross has a board position.
Uh-oh. So that was pre-combat. Ross no attacks, but how about this Chandra Flamecaller for 6 mana?
Speaking of value.
Craig is tapped out. His whole board is 3 toughness. And you know that Chandra's -3 destroys all the lands as well. Craig's going to pick up everything because he's conceding the game. 2 games to 1. Ross Merriam. The streak here of the blue-red control deck by Ross Merriam and Todd Anderson continues here. For those of you not keeping pace here, they played round 1. Todd won, and after that, both of them have won every match of Standard on the weekend. Ross now 6-1 in Standard. Todd entered the round 6-0 in Standard.
Yeah, this deck is very impressive, and I will say in this matchup, there's a lot of pressure on the Goggles deck to find the Goggles. If you don't find that, there's a lot of draw.